Aloha.
Hey.
Wunderbar.
Good. Michael, you got your hair cut.
I did. It's been too long.
Looking very professional these days. Good for you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Lynn, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you. Rasha, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you, Lynn. We have a deadline next week, don't we? We're right on schedule. Okay, I'm excited to get going. What time is it? Yep, we should get going. We don't have everyone here, but there's more than a quorum, and this is recorded. So if they come in late, they can maybe go back to it. I wanted to go over some housekeeping items first, and that is when I look at the studio work plan, we're right on schedule. In the sort of 9th and 10th classes. So this week, you'll be presenting to me your sort of concepts for your building on this particular site in the desk crits for Tuesday night, tonight, and Thursday night. And then next week, after a push this second push this weekend, this coming weekend, we'll actually have a review session. I do have a schedule issue for the 28th that may cause us to need to do a couple of things. One is to conduct all of the reviews in one night, which could happen if Ash is agreeable to not having his lab session that night. And I think I recall him saying that one of his lab sessions in the near future is he's not going to have it, but I have a feeling it's tonight because of the today was assessment day. The other possibility is that we don't start the last group of reviews until 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday the 28th. So I will get back to you about that when I release the batting order, right? The roster for the reviews, and I announce who I'm able to bring in as a guest critic. So I want you to look ahead on your calendars and make sure that you've turned the page on the work plan and you're cognizant of benchmark 1 coming up, which is next Tuesday and next Thursday, and a review session on Monday, the 3rd of October. Now, you're probably sitting here going, what in the world just happened to the schedule? What in the world just happened to the pace of this class? And I want to talk a little bit about that. It's accelerating very quickly in case you haven't felt that tug or that momentum. And it's going to start to get faster for us as we get deeper into October. And I know that's a whole month away, and I know you're saying, well, I've got a whole semester really to, design this building. And I'd like to sort of prod you to resist thinking that way. I'd like to sort of think a little bit more about, in effect, designing the building tonight and next week, and kind of resist the temptation to continue nurturing the project from here on in. So one way that you can do that is to embrace the He talks about the core project. And I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. For this studio, the design of the building, what it looks like as an aesthetic proposition, what it feels like experientially, and what it how well you do any of the sort of illustrations that describe the qualities that I just described are definitely important. And they're definitely important in many other studios. But the core project of this studio, the project within the project, the core project of this studio is to make certain that you cover all of the territory to propose a design that is plausible, that is workable, and that is in effect buildable, at least through the illustrations that you're going to be doing by the end of the term. And in my mind, ladies and gentlemen, you kind of need to be moving into the core project in that 14th module week, in that third module, the 14th class session. That's when all of the other things that are heavy lifts that comprise the core project for this studio really kick in. And if you look at module 3, if you look at all of the sessions from October 5th all the way to, oh, I'm just looking down here, honestly, until Thanksgiving, and you capture in your mind's eye all of the things that you need to be doing and illustrating and thinking about and resolving in your project, that's where the real effort resides. That's where the core project is. So what does that mean for like what you all did last week and what you're going to do this coming week for next week's presentation? That's kind of, if you will, the creation of the chassis in which all of this core project will fit. So it's really important for you to have something tonight that I can respond to and help move forward in a critical way so that you can move past the planning of the project and move into the core project. Okay? So I'm looking forward to the conversations tonight and on Thursday night to help us get into that. And so I think the task should be to work together towards that end. And what I'm saying tonight is really not any different than, you know, what I alluded to last week in the send-off from Tuesday's session and Thursday's session. So I just want you to take a deep breath, look at the calendar, look exactly at where we are tonight, and look ahead to 11/23, right, which is Thanksgiving. And there is indeed a lot of territory that you will need to be covering in order to hit all of the items that comprise the core project. And we're gonna be talking about those themes within each of those weekly sessions, particularly on the Tuesday night talks. But this is the point in the semester when you're running on all cylinders, and because you've already created the chassis in which all of this stuff in effect fits or resides or takes place. All right. That's the one thing I wanted to say, and I want to make sure I pause for a moment to make sure you all are clear about that, and that you, if you have any questions, this would be a good time to raise them. Are we hunky-dory on that?
Hi, Mark. It's Lynn.
Hi.
I'm clear on what you're saying, but I'm wondering if maybe we can discuss a little bit with the entire group about the expectation for the presentations next week and the format for them, and before we head into the individual
Yes,
talks.
of course. So you will have probably only 7 minutes to present the drawings that I think that for a reviewer to grasp your intentions clearly, there are common and conventional drawing types that most designers and architects are familiar with. And so I'll list all of those food groups, right? The site plan, a basement plan to illustrate parking, a ground floor plan, a typical residential floor plan, and a roof plan, since there is a program that deals with the roof, and then maybe a three-dimensional model, or maybe some elevations, or both. The degree to which you're able to do both is probably going to be a function of kind of where you're sitting tonight in terms of like the level of engagement that you've been able to bring to the table for this week's session. So it is a session also next week that will have a guest critic, and we will engage in the presentations in tandem, like we do the desk crits, so that we can get through that material as efficiently, but as carefully and as thoroughly as possible. Can you think of drawing types that I've not listed that you think would be useful?
A section, perhaps?
A section would be great. You know, we drew a site plan for you for the program brief, and then Michael drew that in the model, so you have the tools to illustrate that. And then there is a section that is in the program brief that talks a little bit about building height and stacking in terms of program. And I think that you should, include that as well. Good add. Thanks for catching that. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, you want to have as much information out there for next week as you possibly can. Do things need to be beautifully rendered and all of that stuff? No, not necessarily. Do things even need to be, you know, CAD drawn or drawn in Revit or Rhino or SketchUp? No, not necessarily. You saw 2 scale drawings that I shared last week that could work, and you know, someone could present an entire proposition from that vantage. But I think most of you all draw much more efficiently, much more quickly in Rhino or SketchUp or in Revit, maybe CAD. So I would select a software that's agreeable to you, not one that you have to learn this weekend in order to do something you've always wanted to do, but to do the kinds of things that you need to do efficiently. So I will you to write a simple 1 paragraph, like 4 sentences long program brief that describes what you're intending to do. And I will add that to the grade sheet that I will share, A, with all of you, and B, with the faculty and the guest critic. And just like in the first module, you will grade each other, and then you will return those to me. And I'm going to give you some very specific instructions that Michael's grade sheets caused me to invent for us this semester. You're going to name them in a very specific way so that they that the student can identify who submitted the grade sheet, and we're going to do that with initials. Okay. Hi, Andrew. How are you? I see Alex, you're here. Carmen's here. And I think I see Wu and Luis. Luis, you're not wearing your Tiger's hat. Those are good questions. Any other questions? I want you to look at next week as a moment or a threshold that offers us a snapshot of how you've resolved your understanding of context, of program, and how all of that program fits into the site, right? I also want next week to be a snapshot of your initial sectional thinking and your elevation and or massing thinking, because I want you to get to a point by October 3rd where those things are resolved. okay? Or as close to toward resolution as it is possible. Are there any other questions, particularly for the slightly latecomers? And adding you to the invite list, so I apologize. Sorry about that. Thanks. Okay. I'm pretty sure that anybody that sort of, you know, is on campus or is not on campus didn't see this lecture. It's probable that you all who, you know, live away from the university don't watch the lecture series. That a lot of you all in, you know, third year, fourth year, when these lecture evenings occur, particularly if you're in studio on Thursday night like we are, I'm pretty sure that some of the lectures you miss as well. You have missed that talk because I want to play about 25 minutes for you tonight of Beth talking about her work, not only in Boston. I'm very interested to have you see in terms of how it is fairly comparable, not necessarily in size or in density, but fairly comparable to the kind of project you have in terms of doing a new building in and then she talks a little bit more about her work in Brush Park, where she's doing two different residential typologies. And she is a very, very graceful, poised speaker. She's a clear thinker, and I think that comes across in her talk. But I think the really interesting thing is the set of diagrams that she uses to explain things. And I think that these types of diagrams that I'm going to share with you tonight are going to be useful for you as you sort of really dig deep into your portfolio of drawing types for the coming week, because I think you'll enjoy emulating them. So I'm going to screen share, and I'm going to play the lecture that Beth Whitaker gave back on gosh, probably April 6th or April 8th. And she also gave this talk the day before at the University of Detroit Mercy. So I'm going to start that, and we'll play it for about 25 minutes.
Like Beacon Hill, but very much the Triple Decker, which they surprisingly romanticize.
Nope.
But incredible views to the city, and it's really starting to boom in this area because it's one of the last frontiers that's still somewhat affordable. So we were lucky to get this project, which is right next to an active shipyard. The west side of our site, and the Triple Decker flanking the east. So there is probably just FYI, a 6 or 7 months, sometimes longer, intense process with the neighborhood where you're meeting every month, showing them schemes, and a lot of opposition. And we were really thrilled after we kind of talked through the narrative of the site and how much we loved the shipyard that they maybe had forgotten about. Well, the architecture, and not just the architecture, but the modern spirit of this space with this artist community that actually works on these incredibly large and fantastic sculptures that you see here. This is right across from our site. That's our site before we built it. And so how could that become the actual stronger context? We work a lot in this historical fabric, which I think is why Bedrock hired us to work with them on Brush Park, because we knew we had to somehow marry these beautiful old mansions and the preservation of those with this contemporary architecture. So this is our site, again, flanked by the shipyard and the Triple Decker. So there's a lot of this. And so what we did is we really had to maximize the front facade because that was our only chance of view and light. There's a back, but it's very much a back. There is no view, there's a little bit of light. And then the tricky thing with housing, so we really geek out on unit typologies and the kind of unit. So we think of them in a very pure way in the beginning. Is it a floor through? Is it a maisonette? Is it a flat? And so on. So we had to put 9 units in this project, which was super tight. And then we had to incorporate 2 means of egress. And I know you might glaze over, but these particulars of housing are really hard. And Europe doesn't have to do it. And so therefore they have really amazing housing, and it's really tough to, sometimes it's not, but often it is, to incorporate this, in this case, a cross-grain common corridor through the units. So how does that work? So the good news is, as it often does in architecture, what is a problem becomes maybe its best asset. And it forced us to do these mezzanine units, which are really low ceilings, but voluminous because they open up to these double height spaces that face the water. So we literally went under and over this skewered common corridor through the building. And so ground floor, we had also had to pack in 9 parking spaces, 1 for each unit, 2 stairs. Second floor, they still have private entries. It's the 3rd floor, the second level, excuse me, we call it the second here. But where we have the common corridor that then accesses all the units. So you have to really figure out how to game code, especially in this country. And so this is how we conceived of it. So just a quick, simple animation about the 9 tubes. So we stack the tubes, if it's gonna go. Maybe not, okay. All right, maximize the views. Had to carve out for the parking. We could only go 3 feet below grade because of the water table. We're right next to the ocean. And we could only go 32 feet, 5 inches because of an angry abutter behind us because we were gonna block his view. So we were literally shoehorned in every way and had to maximize every inch, which I, for some reason, find we often have to do with our projects, not so much with Brush Park. And then the idea was, again, to go below and above this common corridor to have these really great views out. And then what we try to do in all of our projects is incorporate as much outdoor space as we can get. And it's, again, it's tricky in these tight zoning envelopes, but we built in a back green space, roof deck, and then these recessed balconies. So we love these balcony spaces and what they do to the streetscape and the whole dialogue with the street and the neighbor. When you're only 20 feet up in the air or even less, I think there really is a great dialogue with the pedestrians. This is a very pedestrian-friendly, active corner of the city. And then on the front facade, which I would say is the core project, other than the complicated section, is where we really brought out the aesthetic and the sensibility of our work. So the idea was to have rapid and something very modest like corrugated metal and red cedar, strategically red cedar, because even that was a high price point for this budget. And then to distinguish the 9 units with these giant steel and yellow super frames, and then wrap this, we call it a shrink wrap facade, wrap the facade with the stainless steel mesh over these triangular gusset plates. So the idea was that it's figural, but it's subtle. Not very green, as you can see from the shipyard. And it's reminiscent of the chain link fence, although it's a really nice mesh. It's from Germany, it's not chain link. And that was the way that we sold it to the neighborhood. So all of these projects have a narrative that we have to really bring the whole city and the neighborhood along with us on in order to get them through. So again, the shrink wrap facade, this is a quick diagram of the idea, a couple of renderings about the layers, and then how this could become a green screen over time. And then the tedious task of actually sewing the screen onto these gusset plates with this incredible steel shop and this man on the ground that used to work on boats and netting for boats. So he was a great find, and actually helped us put this whole thing together. And here's the finished product. So it's interesting because what was so concerning for the neighborhood was the context and how this wasn't a triple decker. But since then, we're now working with another developer that bought the lot next door that we tore down, and we're building another one with a Corten steel screen. And then 2 doors down from that, we're doing a third project with that developer. So we're trying to create a new context for this pocket of the city through these projects. I'm just going to show one tonight. And its closeness to the street and its proximity to the shipyard. And then a few images of the interior. This is the unit that we thought would be so compromised. Actually, there's 4 of them. These became the best units because they have these mezzanine triple tier spatial conditions. And they open up to these double height living spaces and views out to the water. So we mix a lot of high-low. We will do really high custom components of our project and design them literally around IKEA or off-the-shelf cabinetry and so on. There's a view from the roof deck looking out to the city. And so, you know, we were working with these small storefront projects, and then we did a couple of housing projects. And so we were trying to bring in this interest and dialogue with the street, with multifamily housing, with the public and so on, into a single family house. And so this was a great opportunity to work with this brilliant professor of engineering at MIT that we met through the Beaverworks project. And he had been living.
Okay, so I just wanted to pause it there for a second. Again, to you know, you can go back and look at this lecture online. It's, you know, LTU COAD, Elizabeth Whitaker from 2017. It's a terrific talk, and I think if you're unclear about any of the things that she's saying or the details of her drawings, I would encourage you to look at that. Also, that particular project is found on her website, and you can dig deeper in terms of perusing the work. Now I'm going to take you to Brush Park.
To Brush Park. So I showed him some other projects too when we interviewed, but I showed him some of those smaller projects, even though they seem irrelevant to the kind of work they were hiring us for. But I think it was important to explain how we think about material, how we built these housing projects for very low prices per foot for Boston pricing, and how we think of these social spaces and pockets, the courtyard, the garden, the balcony, and how that might play out at a place like Brush Park, which is full of opportunity. So you know it, probably. That's it today, although they're starting to move dirt around. And the Bedrock was smart to hire a whole bunch of architects to work on it. So they didn't give it all to any one voice. You may know we're working with Loha out of LA. They are doing the big apartment buildings. Studio Dwell out of Chicago, HAA, they've been amazing. They're kind of running the whole landscape, urban planning, master planning, and they have several projects on the site as well. But Merge is engaged in these sites right here, right on Edmond Street. So I'm looking south, back to downtown. And so we were lucky enough to get the duplexes, which align Edmond Street, and then these 6 aggregates of carriage homes. So the white ones right here, and there are 2 more rows of it back here. So these are the Loha projects in these 4 corners, like bookends. Studio Dwell is way back there and some on the side, and then HAA has a little bit everywhere. So that's the site plan. This was our scope, is our scope. I'm going to show you the carriage homes first. So the way I talked about it with Brush Park, with Bedrock, was an idea about how to marry the duplex typology with the carriage homes, because when we got the initial master plan, it's still parking. But there was a sea of parking, blank slate sea of parking, and then this fantastic idea that HAA has and is now implementing for what they call the Muse, which is a big swath of green space that's going to cut right through north-south through the body of the blocks, which is great. So people will, in theory, filter through those that live here, those that may not, and it creates this wonderful social space already. So we thought, well, why don't we capitalize on that and not just provide parking, but how do we actually bring in smaller, more intimate garden spaces, private courtyards, semi-public courtyards, and so on. So really make this a happening inside the middle of the block. And then the carriage homes themselves are not a main street. They are along a created alley also in the middle of the block, running east-west. So there's a lot of intersection. And we wanted to think of that as a kind of a macro and a micro idea. So just showing you a cluster. So this is our full carriage home scope. We have 6 of these aggregates, and they're about 10 to 11 units each. Zooming in on one, what we did is very much like the house I just showed you in Lexington, Mass. Found a way to provide a courtyard as a kind of linchpin, kind of a void linchpin between each pair of units. So that, that was, everybody got excited about that in diagram, and then we were like, well, how's this gonna work in terms of privacy and so on? So one unit owns the courtyard and has access to it with transparent windows. The other unit doesn't own it, does not have access, and it will have translucent glass. So they get the borrowed light from the courtyard, but not the access to it. And so, of course, those units will have a different price point. But the idea is that there is this mirrored relationship around these courtyards of these unit types. We created probably 3 different unit types and then a variation on 2, so 5 total. So it's not a copy-paste kind of housing project. We try to avoid that. We try to find economical ways to repeat enough that there's an economy of scale, but to make a variety of options and spatial and layout conditions for the buyers. And so just a couple of early images and schematics about what you would see. These are, and yet they are full of light and these glimpses of exterior through this courtyard condition. They're 2 stories, some of them are 3 stories. So the roofscape, which I'll show, is really important to this piece of the project, in my opinion, because they're a little bit lower than the duplexes, and because of LOHA's higher mid-rise projects that surround it, the roof of the carriage homes is very much the 5th facade of the site. And so you hear about the 5th facade with the roof, but this is literally be viewed from all the outdoor spaces and all the apartments from the 4 corner buildings. So, and with the undulating roof that we designed in this project, it allows for these really nice double height, 1.5 story height interior spaces. So here's a unit that looks into and owns the courtyard space next to it. Just a slightly different relationship on the ground floor. From the kitchen, looking into this green space where, of course, it'll rain and snow. And then another unit type and its relationship to the courtyard. And then the formal studies of how we wanted to think about the roof. So not just as a really nice, not flat roof to look down on, but also how we could start to have this kind of back and forth and staggered outdoor space of roof decks. So the roof decks stagger from the north side to the south side, and then they provide this really great outdoor space for the people who are going to live there, but also this super lively landscape that's just, again, like 20 feet up in the air off the street. And so here's how it's playing out, and it's pretty much going to look like that. We have a lot of red cedar. We're using the screen idea again that we used in East Boston, but differently as a growing screen. And then really looking at how these aggregates relate to and abut the alleyway, and how that can become, how the back is going to hopefully feel like the front, and the front like the back. And so here's a quick view looking down the alley where it's not very wide, you can imagine, but these second level shallow balconies, I think, will provide a lot of life down to this corridor. And then we're working with these pattern pavers to try and really enliven it and bring off the geometry of the carriage homes down to the streetscape and the horizontal. And then a quick view of the back. So this is the side, this is the north side that will face the south side and city side of the duplexes. And so how we deploy that, so this is the kind of thing, of course, no one's going to be up this high, but this is the sort of roofscape that you start to see when you're in one of these taller buildings. And so next, the duplexes. So this is the front run. They only run on one block. The carriage homes run on 1, 2, 3. There are about 36 of these, and they are right along Edmond Street, and right across the street are 1, 2, 3, 4 of these gorgeous old homes that Bedrock is preserving and renovating. And so this one was a little bit trickier. So we had corrugated metal, we had mesh, we had some red cedar on the carriage homes. This one really was just a few feet across from these gorgeous Victorian homes, and there's a lot of brick. So we had a lot of early studies that were materially more like this. But I wanted to show this. We didn't land quite here. We have a lot more brick now, which I'm excited about. But I wanted to show this image because this was an idea we had about really amplifying this idea of the muse at a more of a micro level and between these duplex units that you could filter through into the back of the site, into the middle of the site, into the site, into the body of the block. So we really looked at how we could filter people through the block, the residents and those that are pedestrians. There's a lot of retail that's going to be on the corner buildings, not in our buildings, but on the LOHA buildings on the 4 corners. There'll be a lot of new retail. So we're hoping there are a lot of people from the city that are going to be on the site, not just the residents. So we initially looked at 2 different types. We looked at what we called the stacked and the banded. And these 2 run east-west along Edmond, and the demising wall is kind of in the middle of the chunk. And then the banded runs north-south. So, and they had their merits. We thought we would go with one versus the other when we presented it to the client, but in the end, they asked for a mashup of the 2, which was tricky. We didn't design it that way, but now we have. We're thrilled, but it is very much this puzzly kind of Jenga combo of the 2 housing types, which I'll show you. So the stacked is the east-west slippage, and then how we started to morph it formally into these slots where people could pass through into the block, the common stairs. And then the back, what we needed to do was provide a carport for parking, which is typically kind of a horrendous structure. So we tried to make something fantastic out of it, which was simply to, not so simply, but conceptually simply, to create this landscaped roofscape that would cover up the parking and be this great outdoor space that's sort of private because it's elevated for those that live on the south side. And this faces the back side of our carriage homes. So there's a really nice relationship with all the roof decks and the balconies and the roofscape of the carport for the duplex. And then the stacked is the north-south. Again, how we modified and modulated that formally to create this typology, and then how these 2 came together as one project. And so you can see it, I think, best in plan. This is the stacked, this is the banded. So the banded units bookend on Edmond, the east-west inside of Edmond Street, Edmond Place. And there are these gaps that are formed between the stacked units to allow for this filtration into the site. So just a quick view of the units, the 2 types, and how that worked. So this is a very different, I think, sensibility than the carriage homes. I think they're related, but these are going to be mainly brick, and it's really an exercise in tone on tone and a kind of a subtle variation in the brick tone and the brick pattern and a little bit of the brick formation. We have, this is the back side, this was the Edmond Place front elevation. And so we obsessed over these end elevations and this idea almost of a still life collage, thinking about the elevation as kind of a subtle layer and thin layer on layer of the brick and the brick tone and the brick pattern. There's a little bit of the texture here with the brick pattern, and how that would start to, kind of start to feel like the massing is very blocky, but then the surface and the facades are a geometry in and of themselves as well. Very orthogonal. And then how that relates to the historical brick screen, that we're working with at the lower entry levels. And we have a screen on this project. This is the backside of the carport. This is the corner of the carriage home. And then I'm showing this slide because this is a slide that was shown to the neighborhood during the historical meetings and like talking about context. And what we did is we found that a lot of these homes have these incredible giant clover, single clover patterns on some of their detail with a very different hand. And so we found a contemporary pattern that's out there on the market that is a clover pattern, which when it's, of course, super small and multiplied throughout the entire wrap of the carriage homes and then these strategic stair towers of the duplexes, looks very contemporary. And the neighborhood loved it, and they loved the association with it and understood that it was contextual, yet had its own voice. So.
Okay, so this was, I think, a really useful talk for you. I would encourage you, when you have another 15 or so minutes, go back and rewatch the presentation. Actually, the entire lecture is really good. But what I just showed you was, again, Brush Park, and before that, the piece in Boston, and I kind of leapfrogged over the house in Lexington, Massachusetts, although that's a beautiful project nevertheless. And I want to sort of pause on a couple of things because she talked about the core project, which I think is a really interesting sort of thing. I mean, clearly in her work, everything was in play, everything was under consideration, everything was resolved. But for her, the investment or sort of extra creative effort, their focus was in the downtown Boston piece. It was the the shrink wrap facade, right? So she's clearly indicating that within any project there are moments when preference and prerogative are operating, and I think this is a cue for you in your own work. I think it's something that you can embrace in your own design thinking. The other thing I thought was really interesting, there's three things I think that are really interesting. The second thing I think that is really interesting is how the roof is the fifth facade, right? I thought it was really a lovely thing that the roof plan was something that you would or could see from other parts of the community. And the idea being here, and of course you have a building next to you that's even taller than what's allowed in our zoning district. So those folks really have this ability, right, to look down upon your own roof. So thinking about the roof as the fifth facade, thinking about it in terms of program, thinking about it in terms of a passive program like Greenscape, or thinking about it as active program like the community room and the terrace with maybe a barbecue up there, these kinds of things. Thinking of it as a binary, like in the work of the architect. Again, thinking about the facade, and then in the duplets, right, that are running along Edmund Place, she's thinking about the rear facade and the carport. And of course that could have just had a slopey corrugated metal roof that shed water and snow very easily and very minimally, but thinking there about that as a roof that contributes to the reading of the fifth facade there, and letting that become part of the overall sort of experience for not only the viewers but the users and homeowners of this project. So I really value the clarity of design thinking that she brings into Brush Park and into Boston, and I would encourage you to imbue your own work with those similar sensibilities. So those I think are really two really good things. And then finally, right, the clover, the single clover as an ornamental figural thing that can be found, you know, you might see that in some of the millwork or the woodwork in the context that you're visiting or working in. You might see things in the stonework. You might see things in brickwork that repeat between one sort of element of the context. Things that you see in a more neighborhoodly kind of range, but looking carefully at what's around you, becoming kind of an eye junkie for your own work, collecting what you see, intuiting what you see, and then recasting it in a maybe more contemporary way. As she says, giving it your own voice, I think is a really splendid notion, because it shows you that something that's an antique, something that is existing and part of the beloved context that you're operating in, can have a new voice if you give it that breath, right? If you give it that life. So I really appreciated those three themes in her work, and I hope that you have that kind of clarity. And speaking of clarity, oh my goodness, those drawings are so lucid. They're so simple. They're so clear. They blend infographics and simple line SketchUp drawings with color and text. They build the case over a series of maybe a dozen or slides in the deck. And at the end of it all, she doesn't have everything worked out. She doesn't have all of the precepts that Ash and I are going to be looking at post October 3. But in terms of giving us a fairly comprehensive description of the chassis, you know, Lynn asked this question earlier. I guess that's kind of what we'd be looking for next week. So thinking about things three-dimensionally, thinking about things two-dimensionally, thinking about things in terms of the narrative that you're bringing will help you, I think, present your work clearly and effectively next week. So I think this was a really good stopping point for us as we move into the conversations. And I really think that if you like what you saw, go back and watch those two projects. She also talks about a couple of other things in the beginning, a nail salon that is part nightclub on the off hours that's really lovely, an office space, and so on. So she's got a lot of projects that she unpacks for us back in the spring of 2017. But these were the two I think that were maybe the most, you know, germane to you for your work right now. So I'm glad you had a chance to see that. Any questions or thoughts about what you just saw? Any reactions? Anybody saying, oh, good grief, I can do that. Oh, good grief, I've drawn things like that before. Now I know what Mark's talking about. Or anybody saying, holy crap, I've never like designed like this before. I'm not sure how to like connect a clover to a screen. I never thought about architecture like that. If that's something that you kind of feel, then let's talk about okay. Oh, we will take a short break. I don't think I have the list up. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, here's the arrow. The first. Oh, I can tell you. So I need someone to fill in with Lynn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. So I need someone to fill in with Lynn, and I need someone to fill in either at 7:15 with Rasha or at 8 o'clock with Paige. And then we will have everyone. Okay. So Lynn, I'll be back in about 5 minutes. And then whoever is joining you, that would be great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Are you looking at the I think there's an updated one. Is that the right one? Or am I?
Say that again.
Because it's Courtney, are you going right now, or is Lynn going? Because it's showing on here Courtney's going.
I'm not going today. I don't go until Thursday.
Oh, okay. Then my thing is.
It's probably the one from last week. You gotta go to the email.
Yeah, I think I opened the different one. Okay, never mind.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you all will get a new email each week on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. so that we don't wake Nancy up too early to sort of fill in on her on the list, so that everyone has more or less the same chance to sign up. And because Nancy lives in the Central Time Zone. And so make sure you use that. Okay, I'll be back in a couple of minutes, Lynn, and then we'll just get started, all right? Thanks, everyone. And if you're not scheduled for tonight, you're free to go, although I do encourage you, especially since we have this deliverable next week, to, I encourage you to hang around. I will always say that, but and you'll get tired of hearing me say that, but it's certainly your choice. So I'll be back just to get a glass, and I'll be with you. Okay, Lynn. Before we get started, I guess I'd like to say one more thing about the core project concept. That was loud. And that is that when you examine the site plan, ladies and gentlemen, and you look at the information there and you understand the role of the streets, the alley, and the vacant lot, there are, quite honestly, only, to skin this cat, and I'm actually not even convinced that there's two ways. I'm convinced that there's only one way. And during Ash's lecture the other night, I designed the building. Right? So those are my sketches done on the fly, almost to scale, showing how I would approach the sort of basic partie. I'm not so concerned about what you do on the ground floor, because I think there's only one way that can really operate. So I'll be very interested to talk with each of you about that this week. And maybe you'll prove me wrong, but I want this step to be easy, because the steps that follow are really more important, and they are the core project. So I'm going to help you understand how to plan a project like this. But I really want you to, because I really want you to focus on the remainder of the semester in terms of that core project. So Lynn, I'm with you now, and I'm going to go to the drive that you shared.
Yeah. I did just upload a couple of my slides, got scrambled. So when you open it, the site plan should be the first page.
Where did it go? So, okay, so 7 is the first page for you.
Yes. It did just upload to the drive, so it should be available to you in the correct order as well.
So if I close it and go back to email and open it, yep, it's correct.
Perfect. Okay, so I guess what I have for you today is, I guess, a series of programmatic and schematic drawings, and less on the infographic side of things. I think for me, the past week has been an exercise of fitting the program on the site and studying adjacencies, as well as context. So the site plan here is pretty basic and rudimentary, but I just wanted to discuss with you some, I guess, talking points that I've considered for this site plan. So I am looking at doing a C or a U-shaped building with an interior green courtyard that rests on top of a first floor sort of podium, so to speak, that covers the majority of the ground floor plate. Pushing right to the road and trying to keep with the buildings to the north and south, as far as our alignment along John R. And then the dashed line is indicating the ground floor below, which recesses in even further. My goal with that, I guess, is sort of a personal preference for me. Sorry, when I'm in the public realm, is I love it when buildings have covered walkways on a rainy or a snowy day, and you can kind of pass by and be covered. So that was something that I wanted to think of for people.
I love that too. But I want to always try to give you guys the counter argument to that.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if I'm a struggling retailer and I'm in an arcade like you're proposing, I'm in shade or shadow, particularly if I'm on the north facade, and so I don't have that street presence. So that's something that you
Absolutely.
You know, it's a compelling argument, but I agree with you, and I agree with you particularly in terms of the sort of sanctity of the pedestrian and protecting us from rain and wind and snow and even heat. So I definitely appreciate that.
So you'll see what I have done is when we get to the ground floor plate, is I do have 2 separate retail spaces, and one is right up against the street and the other is recessed. So I'm trying to give our retailers some options to address that concern. The larger one, I'll admit, is recessed, but my hope is that when the pedestrian shelter's there, you see the sign, and then of course with illumination, there can be a way to still draw attention into that space, and then given the primary corner as well. So I guess my next plate, if we want, I don't know if you want to talk first floor first and then look at the basement, or how you'd like to.
Yeah, your internet is, things are lagging right now, so I'm looking at the basement plan. Is that where you want me to be?
Sure, we can talk basement. So this was definitely.
And the basement plan has north looking up, and
yes,
the alley is at the bottom of the sheet?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so we've got our vehicles coming in off the alley, heading down a ramp into angled one-way parking. Was the only way I could fit 50 spaces in the basement, with 2 stairs coming down and 2 elevators. So this was and then there should then space for 2 ADA wider spaces with the aisle to get out as well, which isn't identified yet.
And you know, so there's a condition in parking facilities like this. It's called level of service. right? So the level of service of this facility is such that everyone who lives here kind of knows the radiuses, right? The radii, they know the bumper to bumper dimensions. They know it's one way. They just sort of have a higher degree of familiarity. So the little dead end that you have in the northeast corner is kind of forgivable in a level of service like this deck, because the one or two homeowners that get that space, and I suspect that all of these spaces would be assigned,
Yes.
or maybe not, but if they would be assigned, then that homeowner, knows how to pull in it and knows she has to back out and then turn left to exit. That's kind of, you ingrain those things, right? And so that's kind of an important understanding or takeaway from this. I also think that the angled parking is probably easier for this facility to work dimensionally. And is that what was that your conclusion?
That was my conclusion. Yeah, it was, and with, I guess, sort of the recesses that I'd taken in, and even if we went lot line to lot line, I think there would still be a struggle to do 90-degree with the wider aisles that you then require for cars to turn in and out. So these are a 30-degree angled space.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be
Lynn,
the
I
best.
think that the property line needs to also be evident on this basement plan. I know
Sure.
that's an abstraction, but when I look at the site plan, the depth of the notches along the streets are not showing up here, and then I look at the notch where the north storage locker is, and then that east-west drive aisle next to it. I'm not seeing the same notch in the site plan above. I see it in the dash lines of the site plan above, but I just think that you need to have a color-coded or a specific graphic for the sight line to make that evident. And then I think also the ramp should have like a stair cut, an angled line with the little S in it, and that happens. That the position of that angled stair cut line or ramped cut line. Right? So that what happens then is that at column line D all the way down to E plus, almost to F, there is a possibility that the basement storage could actually migrate under there. And you could get more parking. Although I don't know that that's a driver, but some of that storage could slip under there, and the current storage in the southwest corner could actually be other kinds of things, right? Other program elements.
It could, yeah. I had thought about it, and then I guess I wasn't sure how to use the extra space if it were to be parking, because we couldn't. It'd be difficult to turn a lane in and out. But if it becomes other sort of maybe a service space or a storage space of some kind, then it might be more useful to take advantage of the space underneath the ramp.
Yep. This is a really sensible plan. I like that. Are the gray boxes stairways then?
They are. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're saying 3, and then which one is the elevator box? Is that the middle one?
The middle one, yeah.
At column D?
Correct. Yeah, D6.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go.
The elevators.
Is there anything else I need to know about that?
We can go upstairs.
Yeah, okay, again, the footprint of this is good. I just can't visually reconcile just yet.
Yeah.
Where this sits on the site plan and the boundaries.
Yeah, I'll add some context to it for sure for next week.
Yeah, and even this plan is different than the footprint of the basement below it. So I think this plan to have, well, I see that now. I see it now, but now anyways.
So the ground floor led to some interesting conclusions for me, but I guess primarily we'll discuss. So I have retail on the two corners of John R. with the parking for retail and potentially visitor parking as well for the residential units, I guess on the northwest corner of our site. That's correct. I did also want to provide an interconnected lobby that residents access both Alfred and John R. And from either way, I've also
Lynn, let me
added
just understand something. Let me just understand something. At the northwest corner, that's, I guess I could look at it under a larger. You have visitor parking off of the street.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct. It's on site, off the street. And somewhat sheltered as well.
I've never thought of that.
The floor above will overhang.
Nickel generator, reception. You know, I think the stairs ought to be a different color because they're also this is the gray color, Lynn, that you're using for the mechanical room, and
I can make them a different color.
You want those conditions to jump and be memorable as you roll through the floor plans.
Sure.
So you have loading off of the alley.
Mm-hmm.
And parking off of the front. I guess I have to get lukewarm to parking in the front yard of that street. I could probably learn to like that. And then the purple, all of the sort of common corridor that links the sort of lobby experiences of guests to the interior of the building. And there's also a lobby on John R. then, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then I'm also seeing the colonnade that sits more or less at the property line, and you're holding all of the retail space, at least the big retail space on the hard corner, you hold that back. Okay, I'm there.
Correct. Yeah, so all of our services are sort of at the back off the alley. I did add in additional program for building management. I had some space up here. They probably need a little office with a couple for maintenance people and reception people running that kind of activity.
Yeah. How deep is the retail space off of John R. and at the bottom?
At the bottom, I can get a dimension for you.
I can't read it. Is it 20'7"?
I have, you're looking for a north-south dimension?
No, east-west. Or 29?
I have 28 foot 9 inches.
So
Pretty small.
the building management, yeah, but it has lots of exposure.
Mm-hmm.
It could spill out as a cafe, right?
Absolutely.
On your own property before you even get to the sidewalk. So that distance between the wall of the facade of the retail B out to this property line could be paved for cafe life. And I think that footprint could get smaller, could be more like 600 square feet. And you could basically slide that north-south wall of building management and give it to retail too. That would be, and then that would maybe allow you a better retail space there.
Yeah, it was positioned on a grid line, but I'll move it and make the program more usable. Figure out the rest later. I guess the oddest conclusion for me was the location of the mechanical room on the ground floor, which seems very atypical. Ground floor space is so valuable. I ended up liking it there. First being with my C shape, this mechanical room is very isolated. I'm not too concerned about its acoustic effects on several, I guess, highly sensitive residential units. I also have lots of venting opportunity as well directly to the outside, and I see it do maybe an oversized, aesthetically pleasing architectural louver that can provide some sort of, I guess, intricacy and detail happening along that facade that I see eventually being brick facing the adjacent property. It kept it out of the basement, which would make venting more difficult. It kept it off the roof, which would lead to screening issues and, I guess, isolation from residential units below. And so I've sort of settled on this, and I'm not sure what you're going to think of it there, or any of your thoughts on it. But that's sort of where I've landed at this point.
I guess the only thing that I'm kind of, I guess I'm a little concerned about the size of it. Just in terms of real estate, it does seem to command a lot of the footprint. And if some of that could be pared back and located in the new mechanical room in the basement that I just found for you, where you slide the bike storage under the ramp and find a way to get us into both of those spaces easily, then this ground floor footprint could change a little bit. Might be nice to then trim the mechanical room from column B north and bring it back, and maybe privilege the streetscape with not a mechanical room, but with more, more like common space or something like that.
So give it back to reception a little bit, give them more off of.
Give it back to reception, or maybe the mail room is over there, or maybe
I have the mail room, I guess, closer to the entrance.
It could be a lounge, or it could be an exercise room there.
Yep.
I could like the idea of like it could be like a community room where it could be used for conferences or meetings and rented out, or it could be an exercise room that shows people doing what people that exercise do in those things, but on the ground floor. That could be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But I think the punchline here is that the program, this 10 pounds of coffee in a 5-pound bag, is a burden to free up any kind of like ground floor public space. That this is really going to be a footprint that has like a community of programs on it. I haven't even turned to the second floor, but does that give you the ability to have roofscape above?
It does. Yes, if you'd like to flip up again.
Yeah, I'm going there now.
Sure. So on my second floor, I did keep a few of the shared amenities up here, thinking more about, I guess, laundry and exercise. I wasn't sure if people would necessarily want to go down in their jammies and their slippers to run laundry or whatever it is that they're doing. So here we start to see the C shape that's been created. All of the shared facilities are close and off the elevator with views into the courtyard. And then from there, and then we'll have terraces. And then also I'd like to give terraces to a couple of the units where we can. And then I see balconies happening above within this space as well. The C shape also gives, like, our unit 201 has 3 sides of exposure, which I think is incredible. They're also going to get great views of that historical property there. So I guess
they also get a terrace too, right? They get a terrace and they get the hard corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a terrific unit.
So it's just sort of trying to create opportunities where there may not have been much of one, as well as our other 2 hard corners are larger as well, with double exposure, but it's actually this one at the end that seems to get the most. So right now I have 3 2-bedroom units per plate, and then the rest individual. How many do I have here? And the total, I know in this design, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So I guess another item I didn't discuss on the ground floor is I've added a 3rd stairwell at the street for John R there, and I see this more of as a convenient stair, a leisurely stair.
Yeah. Right. The stair that everyone will use, right? The
Yes.
stair that it's called a communicating stair, so it can be open
Mm-hmm.
because you satisfy the sort of enclosed exit stairs in an hourly, in a rated assembly.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good idea, and that from like a facade condition, that could be a transparent thing that shows people,
Mhm.
actively exercising and using the facility. So
Yeah.
from an
that's-
evening or morning perspective, I think that would be good.
Exactly. That's what I see that becoming. And then a variety of units ranging in size. I think what's our smallest? 650 square feet, I believe, is the smallest, and our largest is 980.
Yeah, it looks like 209 is the backbreaking unit because it's L-shaped and it's on the street.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think you could
Yeah.
get the bedroom in the narrow leg,
Exactly.
and the bathroom next to it, and then the living and kitchen could be in the short leg, the thicker leg of the L.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah, I do have
that
quite a few
works.
L-shaped units, but I think it will, once we start to place interior rooms within those spaces, I think they'll resolve themselves. But then, and we will have, this building will then have a variety of different units to sell and offer people. And then we will see these replicated on the floors above. So that's
I think the only
mostly
other
what I
thing
have
I'm
going
thinking
on
of here, the only other thing I'm thinking of here is in the pink spaces where you've got community laundry and exercise. It may, in a 5-story building, maybe exercise only happens once. Maybe laundry happens on every floor or every other floor.
Okay.
And maybe the community room happens on the ground floor. And that could free up, Lynn, maybe like a telephone electric room on each floor. It could free up for you it could free up for you meter rooms or anything else that's mechanically sort of oriented.
Mhm.
It could free up some of that space for those things. And then I think it could you may want to juggle some of the, I don't know where you are on your unit count, but
I have
like
49.
215, so 212 could grow all the way into the community room. And you could be able to get 3 units where you're showing 2 leg of the C. If the community room was not there, if it was much smaller, if it ended at column 5. Yes? And then everything from 5 west over to 1 was to get that extra unit.
I guess the reason I had community up here and over a little bit to the west was I believe there was a requirement for access from the road.
Yeah, there is.
But I guess if it's on the ground floor in that parking, then we offer them terrace right on the street as opposed to private.
This is fine tuning, and you can fine tune this and adjust this as you go. But this is exactly where, Lynn, you'll want to be. But I guess I'm not convinced or clear about what's happening. Oh, I see. So those rooms only do this 2nd floor, and then the 3rd.
Yeah, based on the program, I thought we only needed 1 of each of these spaces.
Floor. Okay, I might, on the 3rd floor rather, you've got the corridor going all the way to the wall, to the outside wall. That's, that could be a lovely sort of gesture if there was like a smoker's balcony out there or something like that. But a developer would say, I'm going to rent that space So I'm going to use one demising wall, and I'm going to move it so that 315 is actually another 100 square feet or 70 square feet larger.
315. 1415. Okay.
The southwest unit, make that unit bigger because that's on the south corner.
Oh,
right.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Let
That's a
it
good
be,
call.
be one demising wall, but make sure you can get into 316 on the north side.
Yep.
But yeah, just have one demising wall there. But unless this corridor that has a view out to the west is a design driver, but it's not. I'm not seeing it anywhere else. Well, I guess I am seeing it on 2.
No, yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Yeah, to cut it short and give more space to the unit. I think that's a good idea. So then, I
So
guess
is there a
third floor,
roof
we
over
just-
this whole thing? Is that what's going on? What is the X? What is the
Oh,
giant?
the X is open to the courtyard below.
Got you. So there's not like it's not a conservatory glass roof there.
No.
Okay. Okay.
And that roof, I guess I see it being like having greenery on it and being sort of the showcase that's enjoyable and
Mhm.
populated with people watching and sort of really an animated space happening in there that's more private than the street for residents who would prefer that. The third and fourth floors.
And then I'm seeing the legs of the C have a sort of a curtain wall capacity to them, and that could be maybe an opportunity for plantscape or ventilation, or a curtain wall that opens and closes like a Nouvelle building so that it can control the sun.
Mhm.
Quality of life. So that's pretty interesting, and that's only unique to that north leg of the sea in terms of what I'm seeing
Yes.
on your model.
Mhm.
That's quite an
Yeah,
interesting
just
thing.
a feature on that one side.
Yeah, and
Because
if you
there we
think
only
of,
have the single loaded corridor.
well, when you think of those units on the north side of the south leg of the sea, they have kind of a crappy ass view. So maybe if you think of the curtain wall as something beautiful, potentially beautiful,
Mhm.
or programmatically, then it helps rent those units out, right? Because you're giving them
Yeah.
you're giving them a painting, right, to look at.
Mhm. Yeah, and they'll be able to sort of watch people go through the corridors or on the terraces below to try and animate this space and make it enjoyable for those renters. Third floor plate I see duplicated up to a fourth,
Yeah,
and that's where I hit my 49
but maybe
units.
when you get to the fourth floor, maybe since you're getting
Mhm.
really close to your unit count, or maybe if you maybe when you get to the fourth floor, you don't need as many units up there. And maybe like the roof of unit 301 and or 316 and 315, maybe those aren't units there, and maybe those are terraces for the units next to them, so that those are really super units.
With, I guess, with a floor plate identical to the third floor, that's where I hit 49. So if I take away 2, then I need to build another story or carve into existing units to add an additional 3. So I'm a little stuck.
Yeah, well, I'm not
I think
asking
there's a
you to
way
do
use
that.
one word.
I'm asking you to be next week exactly where you are right now.
Okay.
When I say things like this, I want you to know that developers, that these kinds of drawings, which have these kinds of conclusions, excite the developer to begin. She uses the word the Jenga puzzle, right, in her talk tonight. Elizabeth did. So that's when it starts to get really interesting. As you continue to massage these things, you say, "Can I go up another floor and have really attractive units that have terraces and walkouts on them?" Yes, let's see if we can explore that, right? So that's where that prompt comes from. But in
Okay.
terms of like hitting the units making circulation work, having a plausible structural grid, having a plausible underground parking floor plate, you're kind of right there. The only sort of feedback I would give you is that, you know, there's a guy named Aldo van Eyck who was who I think I have his book right here actually. He's an architect from the 1960s and 70s. I mean, he's done really, really important work for a number of years. He talks about something called labyrinthian clarity. And it's a kind of an interesting concept because it talks that at a deep level, we appreciate the labyrinth as an ordering device, as an experiential device. And labyrinthian clarity is different than, say, the clarity that you'd find in a Renaissance chapel or in a garden in you know, France under Louis the 14th, right, where you have long axes and vistas and terminating vistas and that sort of thing. So I don't necessarily mind the labyrinthian quality of the first floor. It is a little unusual, but I appreciate that you're taking advantage of the corner of this property and trying to create kind of two entrances. That may be a good thing. It may present in some communities, even here in Brush Park, it may present some security issues, right? That this demographic may have to deal with. So that may be the only feedback, the only negative thing I'd raise.
Okay.
Along with the other things I talked about.
Yeah. So I guess my last couple sheets, I guess, are looking at our stacking in section.
Yeah. The sections showing the parking garage, showing that it's workable, and showing showing the sort of axonometric views and the street views.
Mm-hmm. So that's, yeah, and I guess it's, once maybe see the 3Ds, the formality of it may begin to make a little bit more sense after looking at plan and all these sort of shifting.
Could you repeat that once, please?
I think once you see this in 3D, it helps to explain all the different plans, and we do have sort of shifting exteriors, and hopefully that helps make this a little bit more sense to you. Obviously, the facades will be animated with windows and balconies, and we'll get that articulation that will help it fit in.
Yep.
But that's, I guess, where I'm at for this week.
That's where you are. I'm comfortable with that. You maybe the roof plan would be the
it doesn't have a
roof
yet because I didn't know if I was going to go. I don't know if I'm going to go up.
Yeah, but you'll want to dedicate some of that roof space. It's not the whole roof plan that's available to everyone. It's just a small portion of it, so that you can maintain the single stairway point of egress. And I might suggest that so you may want to take stock of this. I don't know where you want to put the roof terrace. It may make sense to put it on the south leg of the sea, so that you're close to, more or less close to the stairway and the elevator, and that you have views to the west and the sunset, and you have views to the south. But again, the views to the south are also views to a much taller apartment building. So you don't necessarily have views to the city from there. So it's kind of an outdoor area for evenings like tonight, right? Where you can have dinner out there and have a cocktail or a cup of tea. But thinking about where that could be is going to be an interesting step. And I think the south leg has the most proximity to the elevators and the stair. Okay, I'm going to let you go. I'm delighted to see this.
Thank you, Mark.
Sure, I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Let's see. You're up next.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, how are you?
Sorry,
You want
my
to screen
screen-
share?
Yeah, I'm gonna screen share. My screen just went black. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm gonna screen share. Okay, so I'm screen sharing my first screen.
One more time.
Can you see my screen?
Now I can. Nope, it just went away.
Went away. Can you see
There
it?
it is. Oh, it just went away again. There it is. Oh, jeez.
I'm
Hold
sorry.
on. Let me make sure that you're clicked on. Now I've got it.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, walk me through this.
Okay, so mine is very conceptual still. I had a little difficult time with trying to orchestrate this entire thing. Got a little frustrated.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
More like a lot of frustrated. So, okay, so I'm gonna start. This is the fourth floor. So I'm telling you right now, I don't have my basement plan or my roof plan right now. Those are, I'm still working on them. But I will say, like, my roof is going to have it's gonna have a green roof. So this is the fourth floor.
Could you repeat that, please?
I said my roof is gonna have a green roof.
You said, let me back you up for a second. You said you don't have a basement and then you froze. So can you walk me through what you just said, please?
Yeah, sorry. I don't have my basement
That's okay.
plan or my
Right.
or a roof plan, but I can.
Mhm.
I'm gonna still walk you through what my ideas are for the rest of with what I have. So for the roof, I am planning to have a green roof. But my main concept, so I was really looking into Islamic courtyards and how to really and how that could work in this building. So in an Islamic courtyard, it's actually funny because I didn't see Elizabeth Whitaker's lecture before, so I didn't know about the private courtyards that they created. But this is more of a public courtyard, so it's reveals for the entire building. So I have here units on this side, and on this side, and then there's a hallway and all looking towards a courtyard in the middle here. And I also created a core, so I am still fixing the core because I made my electrical room way too big. And so I have to fix that and have only one main electrical room on the ground floor and then have the rest of them closets just going on top of each other. But this right here is it's going to be the core. So there's a stair here, there's trash here, elevator, and then laundry room. And these two spaces, depending on the floors, whether it's going to be storage or whatever that specific floor needs. So it's going to vary. And then over here we have another stair and then an elevator. And then there's a terrace over here. And so on the other side, you can see there's I made a double height ceiling. So this actually it goes down to the fourth floor. Or sorry, this goes down to the third floor. My apologies. So
right.
And you're looking. This is because it's the fourth floor. So you're looking down to the third floor. And I made this space. It could potentially be. So if we go to the next. Okay. I don't know why it's copied wrong. Sorry. For some reason, it didn't copy correctly. So.
This is maybe easier for me.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just look at this. Okay. So All right, so this is the third floor, and we have the double height room over here, and then there's a terrace looking towards the alley. And what I'm really trying to also do is take advantage of the alley, and not just have it, you know, just have it there. So I'll talk more about that once we get to lower floor. And again, my core here, and then more units around. And there's less units over here because I have the space, a community space, like indoor community space, but still having that outdoor terrace that's shareable with the rest of the units.
I really appreciate these drawings. I love that they're drawn by hand. But I'm having trouble understanding where, like, the boundary of, let's just say, heated and cooled space is. And I'm also struggling to understand if there's a courtyard on each floor, or are we going to be seeing a multi-story atrium space? That's not clear to me yet.
It's a multi-story, so it's not on each floor. It runs down. It's a multi-story atrium. So when you for each floor, you look out and towards this courtyard that's on the ground floor on grade.
Is the courtyard outside?
Yes, it's an outdoor space.
It is, okay. So there's a thermal wall, basically on the footprint of the circulating pathway, and then there's a thermal wall basically kind of at the property line.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I know these drawings are not the best to describe what my intentions are. Okay, and so then we get this floor over here, which is the second floor. And I've added more units because we need to get to 50. So the community space is no longer here. And I do have, there is extra space. So there's a bunch of space here. So I'm trying to work with the program this weekend and see how I can condense these spaces and organize everything, because there is a overload of space. And again, over here, you can see the same thing, like all this space right here, there's nothing here. I just wanted to make sure everything fit within the site itself before I could really move things in and out. And
Right. Does having sort of learned that or made that conclusion, Rasha, do you feel like the footprint needs to be smaller?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, or I was going to say, or are you going to try and keep it the same footprint and maybe resize the room so they take up more space, or add more program on each floor so that, you know, it's more like functional? I'm just wondering how you were going to react to this observation.
So the room sizes, I've like broken them up into 3 different room sizes: 30 by 20, 30 by 12, and 20 by 25. And I came to that conclusion by looking at some of the case studies that we found, and I went through their floor plans to see how large they made theirs, and I compared it to what we're doing. So that's how I broke it down into those 3 sizes. So gotcha. I don't want to go any larger. I don't think I want to go any larger than what I have, nor smaller. Just because then I feel, I mean, I'm also trying to keep in mind that these are older people, and with a larger footprint of space, it's harder then to maintain. But then at the same time, you don't want anything too small where they can't maneuver around their home. So I'm not with the footprint being smaller, that might happen with the parking, because right now I'm having all 50 on below grade, but I don't know, I have to think about parking for the ground floor, like the retail units on the ground floor. So potentially making it the small, bringing it in more, and then having available parking for those units. The
So-
tenants that will be.
So you've drawn this to scale, right? I mean, all of this is,
Yeah.
while it's drawn by hand and let's say freehand and straight edged, it's all to scale. And I guess, and how many, you have what, like 12 units per floor? 3?
Yeah, so there's 12 on this floor.
Or do you have, so how, where are your 2-bedroom units? Which ones will those be?
So the 2-bedroom units,
Are those the 30 by 20s?
yes, those can be at 30 by 20s, but then also we were discussing ADA. And so
Mhm.
I was trying to figure out if there could be some 2-bedrooms with the 30 by 20. And then there's also, there can potentially be a 1-bedroom that's also 30 by 20. It's just larger and has a better capacity for ADA accessibility, accessibility.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm looking at right now.
So here's my concern about what I'm seeing. One thing is I'm really interested in the 20 by 25 units because that's kind of like, that's a hotel room and that's a really good micro unit size. So I feel like when you kind of like blow that up to 1/4 inch scale, Rasha, and start laying that out, you're gonna have fun doing that. So I feel good about the size or area, and I feel good about the intention of a, let's call it a micro unit for lack of a better word. But I feel like the proportion may prove a challenge in terms of an actual layout. So you may need to make them deeper and slightly shallower in the other direction. So they that courtyard may get smaller.
I see.
They may need to rotate and get deeper toward in an east-west direction in order for them to work.
Okay. That makes sense.
Concern, and the second concern, I'm trying to make the courtyard a little bit more manageable. The second concern is that the 30 by 20 is only 600 square feet. And I think if you lay that unit out, you're going to go, holy cow, these are still micro units with 2 bedrooms in them. And I think those might need to go up to 750 or even 900 square feet. And if that was the case, Rasha, you might be putting units on the south leg now.
Okay, I see.
Or the alley, on the alley property line, because you may have fewer units on the north wall, and you may have to find a home for the ones to hit your number. You may have to find a home for them along the south wall. And then finally, my third reaction is the 30 by 12 is indeed, what did I figure that is? 500? 30 times 12. 360. So those are like more micro units. That's 360 square feet. That's a hotel room all day long. But in hotel rooms, they are generally east-west, right? Where the sleeping area or the bed is on the facade, and then the sitting area is inboard of that, and then there might be a bathroom, there might even be a kitchenette. And I'll help you design those as you get deeper into it. But it feels to me like the frame of the building and the tendency to arrange lots of small units around the outside of the building has created a much larger courtyard as a subject. It's a really big driver for this project. And I feel like when you get into the actual unit designs, you're going to go, wow, I need to figure this. I need to revisit this. And I hope that the courtyard can still stay in play. I think that would be good.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I just didn't know.
So do you have a first floor yet?
Yeah, well, where's the first floor? Okay, so that's still, I'm still so the thing is with my first floor is I'm looking at to see what I want to put on the first floor. So currently, so I can decide the sizes of the spaces and how they work around the courtyard. So I do know I'm looking at a yoga studio as well as
Nice.
an exercise room because seniors need to get their exercise in. So I'm looking at combining the two. So this is the residential exercise room, but it's attached to the yoga studio. And I wanted these on the ground floor here, so they have direct access into the courtyard.
Yep.
So if the yoga instructor wanted to have class outside for a day, for example, or these seniors wanted to do some lightweight exercises right out here, they could do so. And they have direct access into it.
So, yeah, I love the idea. I'm looking at the dimensions 30, and that's actually kind of the same depth of the units up above. So
yeah, it is.
Like some of these numbers aren't quite right.
So it's the same as up above. So I'm probably going to have to move all of them like this way to the left.
Yeah.
So they get deeper.
And that's what I'm saying. The courtyard is going to get smaller, right? I think that's going to be a condition that ends up happening. And so you just have to like continue to. So I mean, I draw to scale, draw accurately, and I'm not sure if you want to continue drawing by hand. I like the drawing so long as they are truthful in their scale and proportion, and that they as a drawn thing represent the idea of the thing. So there's that correspondence. Is drawing by hand something you're really comfortable with? It seems like it, but I want to ask you that.
I enjoy drawing by hand for this first portion, so because I scribbled over so many times, and I feel like if I did it, for example, in Revit at first or SketchUp, I wouldn't have had the ability to change it so many times. So
yeah, I know, I understand that. Look, I fully comprehend that. I just want you to be like when you draw, I want you to like think of onion skin and its transparency as an asset in the design thinking, so that stairs are always drawn the same footprint all the way up. Elevators are in the same place all the way up. And that when you say a long, narrow room that has the proportion of the yoga studio and it says 30 by 43, that same proportion has the same dimensions for the apartments upstairs, for example. I was saying to Lynn earlier that it would help if the property line were always in play.
Yeah.
I think that's an important consideration. And just sort of be, maybe you look at one of those units and start thinking about that to double check the accuracy of the units so that, you know that they work. I think that might be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
This is the ground floor. And I see an arrow down there at the bottom of the screen. What is that arrow indicating?
So that's where the cars are coming, in from the John R, and then going down into the parking garage from this way.
So the parking ramp is a wide thing. It's probably 25 feet wide or 30 feet wide. It's gonna take a big bite out of this floor plate because it's a sloping ramp. So I think Lynn drew it. I can't remember what the length of the ramp that she drew was. Maybe you want to talk to her about that.
Okay.
But I think that's going to impact the yoga studio, and it's going to impact the elevator location. And when I was saying earlier that you guys, I don't really want you like trying to invent something new on the ground floor. I really want you to focus on the core project here. In my mind, the street walls, Rasha, are prime real estate for program, right? Like lobbies and retail, and those sorts of things. And I would get that ramp as far away from the street as possible. And the only place that happens to work is where Lynn showed it, which is where I showed it in my sketch, at the west property line. So that it doesn't impact anything along John R. So that may be, I mean, don't resist that suggestion. It's more important that you make this work than it is for you to come up with a brand new concept.
Okay.
That's probably completely opposite of anything any professor in a design studio has told you, but this is live, this is recorded, this could be shared with all of the professors and the dean, and I'm just going to say it. I'm not interested in you inventing a new first floor plan. I'm interested in you focusing on all the other things. And I think there's just only so many ways that you can approach the first floor. Like one way. And I mean, you know, I'm going to screen share. Can I screen share now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to show you my layout. Oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. I'm so sorry. I forgot how to do this. So how do I? No, I don't want to screen share. I just want to hold something up. So, you know, that's my notes. When I was listening to Ash talk last week, I thought, if I was going to do this thing, right, this was my site plan. This is the alley right here. I came in off the alley, and along the west property line, right, I dropped the ramp down. I do have a space where I think you might be able to do some surface parking. After seeing Lynn's layout today, I'm maybe less confident of that. But the hatched blue ink is kind of all of the ground floor. And you see that it hugs the hard corner of the site, right? And then I thought that would be a good typical floor plan, 12 or 13 units per floor, and the line work here, right? That's the corridor and the stair here and the stair here. And then I did, I think I did another layout of the ground floor up here, and then I did an elevation sketch down here, and then I did a massing sketch down here. So I kind of feel like basically that general partie for the site plan is the only partie, because you really want retail exposure, lobby exposure on these two streets only.
Yeah.
You can't do any program here, really, because it's the neighborhoods, the neighbor to the west, and then there's the alley, which you need for access. It may be bigger than the inked area that I've got. It may be smaller. That's certainly something you can create. But it just seems like if you go with that general footprint, that general attitude, you'll because there's still lots to solve in doing that. Because you don't have to do an L-shaped configuration of units like I did. You could do a U or a C like you saw Lynn. It could be a T. It could be two eyes. It really, or two bars. So it could be really anything it wants to be. But I really want to help you solve that first floor efficiently and move past it. That's not the point of the project.
Yeah, that was the first floor was a little bit, well, not a little bit, it was challenging.
I could tell that.
Yeah, but I'll definitely look. I mean, currently I have a C. That's what my units are right now. But it'll just depend on once I change the sizes of them and how I can figure that. So,
Rasha, have you been to the Scott yet on Woodward next to the Bonstell Theater?
no.
Newman Smith designed it. It's on Woodward.
Scott.
It's a brand new apartment building that Saxe Construction developed and built.
I might have passed.
And it's right down the street from our site. Do you see it on Google Earth?
Yeah.
Are you down at the DCDT at all?
Not this semester, no, but I've
It's
been
like
there.
right across the street from that.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about now. I don't know why I thought I didn't know what you're talking about, but I know what you're talking about.
So you should like park you ought to drive down there, park your car, and walk around that entire block and take photographs of it. It's an L-shaped building too, and it has parking, and it's a building very much like ours. I don't know what kind of buildings there are where Josh and Eric are, but for you local folks like Carmen and Luis and Paige and Michael, along with Andrew, gosh, I mean Alex, Courtney, not Alex, but Courtney, we should actually just take a tour of one of those buildings just to get you and your sort of mind's eye wrapped around that, because in some ways I'm trying to make this first step real easy, so that you can get something down and react to it and then embroider it or enhance it as you get deeper into it. But you may want to take a look at that building.
Okay.
Just to try to understand the DNA of it. That's what this effort is about right now, to try and set up the DNA pattern, right, of this building.
Maybe I'll do that on Thursday after work.
Yeah, if you go down there, well, I can't meet you down there then because I'll be racing home to get to class. But if you wanted to set something up there for the weekend, let me know. I might be able to get the Todd to or one of his team members into it so that you can see it. The other one is the Ducharme, which Michael Porras designed, and that's across from that's on Lafayette at the DeQuinder Cut. And I have some friends that live there, and that's Lafayette, just west of the DeQuinder Cut, and that's like 2 large buildings that are bridged, and they're all built over a parking floor, and they have a similar DNA pattern to that.
Oh, I see.
These are both brand new residential buildings that are mixed use in their nature, and it'll help you understand that. And then you'll drive by the building we're doing, Rasha, in Brush Park on the site that you're looking at, and you'll see our walls are coming up out of the second floor. So you'll see the DNA of our building. And honestly, that's how I think you ought to approach everyone. I'm saying this to all of you. That's how you ought to approach it. Okay? I'm around this weekend if you want to do that, you guys. And I'm also around this weekend if you don't, and you just want to talk about your work between now and next week's review. So just ask, all right?
Okay. Sounds good.
Else, Rasha?
Sorry. You cut off. What?
So that's it? Are we all set? I didn't hear you because it froze again.
Yeah, you froze again, so I didn't hear you.
All right, thanks.
All right,
thanks a lot. Am I going to visit with anyone else? I see Paige at 8 o'clock. Does anyone else want to join in with Paige? Paige, do you want to go now?
Yeah, I can go now.
Thank you. So, yeah, that's nice of you because I gave you some late time last week, and this week you can give me some early time, right? It worked
Sounds good.
out.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you turn on your camera?
Yes. Hello. Would you rather me upload my files to the drive, or do you want me to screen share?
You can screen share.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? No. Why don't you go ahead and send me, share the file, the folder, because I'm seeing a lot of lag tonight, and it's probably just because we're doing too much screen sharing.
Okay. Let me just get them in there.
So just send it to email.
Sorry, my computer's really slow.
It's all right.
All right, I emailed them to you.
I got it.
Okay.
So should I open up floor plans first?
Yes.
Okay, I'm looking at all of the 4 floor plates. Here's my immediate reaction, because I don't know what this is drawn in, and that's not a problem. But I feel like the stairs are too narrow or too shallow, and I think that's going to impact things for you.
Okay.
I
have room to wiggle, so.
Yeah, I think so too. But I'm just saying. You remember the remark the other day, Paige, about them being like 9 foot by 20 or 22 feet. You know, when you actually draw an egress stair in a condition like this, it's kind of a 2-to-1 proportion.
Okay.
And are the titles right? I'm looking at the basement, and then the drawing to the right says floors 2 through 4, but isn't that the ground floor?
Oh, yeah, they're switched. That's my bad.
And what are the 4 orange spaces? Are those?
Those are for retail.
So the alley is to the right on each of these schemes?
They're at the bottom.
What's at the bottom? The alley?
Yeah, the alley is going along the bottom.
You're lagging a little bit. I just want to make sure I understand which way is north on this drawing.
I'm pretty sure it's up. The alleyway should be along the bottom.
Got you. So the C. So I think you need to verify that, because you're showing a lot of purple content with stairs and things like that, I believe, on the west property line, and that doesn't make sense.
Okay. I might have messed that up.
it seems like the alley is to the right and the street is to the left.
Okay. Would that affect a lot with the size of the building?
Well, I think that I think the retail doesn't make sense along the residential property line on the west.
Okay.
And I also, looking at the ground floor plan, I can't tell how I'm getting down to the parking level.
I'm still working on the ramp, but it was going to be at the top.
Oh, that's the street up there, though, isn't it? Let me show you this again. Take a minute to look at this. So I drew this just. Can you see that? Okay.
Hold on, I have to open. Okay, yeah.
This drawing right here.
Mm-hmm.
The shaded part of that L. Actually, let me do this so I can see it. Hold on. Okay. So the street is this and this. The alley is parallel to the street. The residential property line is right here.
Okay.
Right? So north is this way. See, there it is. North. I always draw the north plan, even when I'm drawing like quickly and to a for a fast effect. So what I did is I configured program in an L shape, right, along both streets, and that freed up a void space in the site, right, like this, that allowed me to come in off the alley, turn, and go down quickly to a ramp below. And if you look at Lynn's drawing, and I see Lynn is here, if you look at Lynn's drawing, she actually has the same thing. Lynn, can you tell me the length, please, of your speed ramp from the alley property line to until you get like that moment of head clearance? And can you tell me what the overall length of the ramp is? I think she's computing that for us right now, Paige.
Mm-hmm.
Unless she didn't hear me.
I had my original drawings the way, like oriented the way you did, with north facing right. But in turning them for north being up, I might have messed it up because the purple spaces on the ground floor, like where the vestibule is, that's supposed to be the residential line.
Yeah, so you've got that you got to keep the north arrow in play with every drawing. It wouldn't hurt to put it on each drawing, each plan. But you could get away with doing it on just one in one place, because I think you kind of lost sight of the context. So one thing I would always do, even on the basement plans page, is have the property line, and on the ground plan, have the street names. Because you want to make sure that even some bonehead like me can look at it and know exactly where you are, right?
Okay.
Hey, Lynn, can you hear me?
Sorry, yes, I can hear you.
Can you tell me, please, how long your speed ramp is from the ground floor to the basement level?
Yes, let me pull that up. Okay, so I have it sloping at two inches for every foot. My first segment is 29 feet, 8.5 inches long. I then have a landing that is 16 feet long, followed by another slope section at 2 inches per foot that is 30 feet long.
So overall,
And
how
that-
long is it?
Oh, sorry, overall, 75 feet, 8.5 inches.
And you're floor to floor?
10 feet. To the underside of slab.
Thank you. And then that Lynn, when the ramp runs down and it hits its first header in your building, what is that length?
When it hits the first head, I believe it was about 7. I have about 7 feet clear for vehicles.
That's okay. But I mean, what's the length of the ramp at that point? Where you can have first floor program hovering over the ramp.
I have
Right.
first floor hovering over the ramp at 53 feet.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So Paige, what she's just saying is, when you bring the ramp in off the alley like this,
Mhm.
that ramp is 53 feet between like that point where it starts to slope until it hits a wall or a parapet or a face of the building that's sitting on the ground floor. But overall, that thing is almost 77 feet, 76 feet. That means it
Okay.
goes all the way into the basement. So your first floor plan, your ground floor plan has to show that footprint taking a bite out of the occupiable, usable ground floor. And in my belief, it's my belief that that ramp has to be perpendicular to the alley.
Okay.
It's also my belief that that ramp has to be parallel to the residential property line, the so-called west property line. I think that allows for first floor program, which is retail, mail rooms, lobby, exercise, anything that you're going to put on the first floor. It allows for that program to line, right, and conform to the L of that street intersection, so it fits on both streets.
Okay. What is the width that you would recommend for this?
The ramp, I would say, no less than 20 feet. I don't know what Lynn drew it at, but 25 feet would be great.
Yeah, I drew mine at 25.
Okay.
Because at the bottom, you've got people turning and then going up, and then you've got people coming down and turning sharp to go right. So yeah, 25 feet is a little bit more friendly.
Okay, I forgot how much space I had left in the back that I allowed myself some room for. I only left 16 foot, so I can make that bigger.
Yeah, and I think when you draw that ramp coming into the basement plan, you're going to have a different configuration for parking, right? You're going to need to show that.
Mhm. Okay.
So
And
I think
that'll
there's some
probably
generally I think there's some good thinking here, but I also think that the style or the way you're drawing this stuff is maybe not informed by accuracy. And I think that when you and just sort of like program accuracy, the ramps are tough. The ramps and stairs are tough because they impact two things at the same time, right? They impact the basement floor plan as well as the first floor plan at the same time. So
Mhm.
your drawing has to show that impact.
Okay. And that'll probably give me more room for the parking in the basement because I was lacking about 10 spaces. So it's,
Yeah, but I'm looking at that and I think I can find more spaces even when you drop the ramp in there. So I think that's possible. I think what you're saying is possible. Let's look. Should I look at the other plan now, the other drawing?
those are just the units themselves and how they're laid out.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the floor plans. So the unit plan, which is like it says floor 1 ground, but that's really kind of like a floor 2 typical. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what is the purple space?
The purple spaces are the 2-bedroom.
Gotcha.
And then on the 4th floor, which would be the 3rd residential space, I'm going to eliminate the 2 bedrooms altogether and just fit the rest of my 1-bedroom in there. So right now I have 51 units.
Okay. So I don't have any problem with the things that you've done, except that the 2 bedrooms, in the sort of crotch, right, of that U shape, have a fairly long face on the corridor, but a fairly narrow frontage, right, in the court space. And that's a frustration for that 2-bedroom buyer, because they're going to want the most frontage. So because they're going to want that living room page and the bedrooms. So they need the most facade length of all of them. So maybe what happens is the 1-bedroom in the middle there drops out, and you do a 2-bedroom of that entire sort of gap between the legs there.
Okay.
And fill in some of that space in the corridor with the mechanical and the sort of back of house stuff.
Okay.
I typically like to have things like stairways and elevators and back of house stuff, all the stuff you're showing in that mint green. I know this is going to wreak havoc on your basement plan, but I typically like to have that stuff not on the facade.
Okay.
So that the facade can be for transparency, for glass, for retail, for other program spaces. So here's I'm going to sketch the suggestion I'm making for you right now, real quick. I'm saying kind of do the 2-bedroom like that.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Or maybe it's not that big. Maybe it's that big instead.
Okay.
The other thing I'm a little concerned about is the bedroom that's kind of straddling, or the unit that's kind of straddling this unit. Right? So that part of the unit is dark.
Yeah.
And if it could slide, that would help. But I can see, that there's program that's impeding that slide. So you're right in the thick of Beth talked about geeking out, right? You're right in the thick of the geeking out process of making this stuff work. How have you drawn this? What's the software you've done here?
I brought a CAD file into Illustrator.
Gotcha. So that's perfect. That's how I would have done this, because that's what I'm really, really comfortable with. But at the same time, it works for allowing you to color code it and give it some notations and dimensions, which I think is good.
Would it be beneficial? I just realized this. If I took those 1-bedrooms that are straddling the 2 bedrooms and put the stairs in the place where that 1-bedroom would be dark, so that takes up no facade space.
That would work.
And then that'll eliminate the other set of stairs that I have in the middle.
Mm-hmm. I also think that there's some room to adjust because it looks like you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elevators. You really only need 2.
Okay.
And they want to be central, I think. Really mean in the middle, that just means central to or equidistant, right?
Yeah.
So that people don't have tons of. And I kind of think that the elevator should be bundled together. Rasha talked about having one over here and one over there, and I think that just for the practicality of things, it's better to bundle them. For instance, in the scenario where, like, let's say I'm moving into your building and I'm using that hi-hat elevator to move my couch and bed in and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, you walk up to the elevator and you're like, oh crap, you know, another idiot's moving into my building, right? And now I got to walk all the way down the corridor to the other area where the other elevator is. That's kind of impractical. These things together. That's the advice I would give you.
Okay. That makes sense.
And I didn't do a U-shaped building. I did an L-shaped building. But if you look at, where is it? If you look at like this plan here, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
This is the stairway. That's a stairway. The elevator would be in this X area with some mechanical stuff. I'll make it better. And you can see each of these would be the units.
Okay.
There, and then from here to here. So an L-shaped would transform into a C shape, doing by doing something like that.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a puzzle. You have to really, you guys have to think it through. And the easiest way for me to do that, like if I was drawing this in CAD, and I've done this, okay? I've set up layers in CAD that are level specific, right? I might call the layer level 1 or LEVL -1 underscore walls. And then LVL-2 underscore walls. And I can freeze and thaw those layers to see the relationships as I'm moving up or down through the floor plan page. And I think that's another way. So you draw the plans quite literally on top of each other. Okay. And things that are common throughout the building, like elevators and stairs, right? And only 2 elevators, right? Then they're always in the same place, right, Paige?
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
I'm trying to think of what other questions I had before.
Well, I guess I'd say I think you need to draw things like the elevators and stairs correctly. I think you have to draw the speed ramp into the basement and lay out the parking. I think you have the essence of how to lay out the units in a building like this. So I think that task of reworking that plan will be pretty straightforward.
You cut out. I didn't hear you for the last part.
I said I would draw the elevators and stairs to scale on all the plans. I would draw the ground floor to reflect the ramp. I would show the full layout, a new layout of the the basement floor parking. And then I would just revise slightly based on where the elevators and stairs are. I would revise the unit plans accordingly.
Okay.
And then I'm around this weekend if you want to share that with me.
Okay. Sounds good. Did you notice anything, like any rooms that I'm missing or that I haven't put in yet that would be helpful? Like, is there required storage in within the building somewhere?
So I think the trash room in the basement is a problem.
Okay.
Because I think in the discussion that we were having the other night, and maybe this was the night that you were with your sister, I think the guy in the trash truck is going to drive onto the premise, like at a loading or unloading area, and pick up the trash carts there, and then drive out the alley and then back out to like John R. The trash truck is not going to drive down the ramp.
Okay.
And lift the bin up over the trash truck and dump it into the back, and then, you know, drop it back down and back out of, because the trash guy will never be able to turn around down there. And then drive up the ramp to get out. So I think all of the trash stuff happens on the ground floor. I think the vestibule is way too large. You could have drag races in that thing.
Yeah, I think
the vestibule.
I wasn't sure where the.
Yeah, that should be very small. There's not even furniture in it, right? It's just a little room that allows us to get from the street into the building and then back into the parking area. The gym is okay on the corner. I think there's too much retail on too many legs. I think it's really on the street legs. I think the laundry room on the facade is an issue. I think the elevator and the stairs on that ground floor facade is an issue. So those are some things that I think you should work through.
Okay.
I think the unit plans, like I think the unit plans are more or less okay. I'm not sure that I would put the 2 bedrooms in that leg or that gap between the 2 legs, Paige.
Mm-hmm.
I would put them where you've got them, but I might add the 2 more at the, this is gonna be hard for you to understand, but at the southeast corner and the southwest corner, opposite the stairs, in each of the legs.
Mm-hmm.
Because those have 2 corners, or that has a corner, so that has 2 facades, right? Wherever you have double facades, you have that ability to sort of generate more rent and a livelier, better unit.
Okay.
Have you been to the Scott or to the Ducharme?
I have not.
Do you know about them or know where they are?
Not really. I haven't heard too much about them.
So you're downriver. Do you go to the DCDT at all?
Mm-mm. I've never had a class there, and I've never really gone.
So the Scott is directly across the street from it. It's a 5-story brand new residential building that has retail on the ground floor with parking. It has a 3-hour non-combustible plinth, and it has wood frame construction up above for the residential units. It's a perfect sort of version of everything we've been talking about this month.
Okay.
Let me give you the street corner. Woodward. And if you're fixing to go there, let me know. And if I can meet you, I'll walk you around it. Or if you know when you're going to be there, I will be delighted to call the owner and get you into it. So it's at Woodward and Erskine.
Okay, is this the same building you were talking to, I think, Rasha about?
So it's right near your site.
Okay.
It's just north of your site. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Does anybody else want to visit tonight? Or does anybody else have any sort of concerns or questions based on everything we've heard tonight?
Hi, Mark. It's Carmen.
Hey.
So I've been
How are
working
you?
on my plan. I'm doing great.
Good.
And I just had, I don't know why, I'm having so much trouble with the elevators and with the stairs. So I've positioned them on one side and then on the other. And then when I got to like the garage and the lower level, it was just a disaster.
They get in the way.
I couldn't even get the cars in.
Yeah.
And so now I've put them, and let me share my screen.
Please do.
My turn is to go on Thursday, so I'm not completely ready, but I'm just trying to work through the elevator and the stairs. Okay, so it's this part here. So above is Alfred, John R. Alleyway is...
Can you zoom in just a little bit?
Yeah. So right at the corner of Alfred and John R. is where I am placing my lobby. So it's an easy access from both streets. Then I've got retail on Alfred Street, and then I've got retail on John R. Street, which would be here and there.
Yep.
So the way that
let me give some immediate feedback.
Yes.
I would try to put the elevators right next to each other.
Okay.
Would make the lobby really, really small. No bigger than the stairs, quite honestly.
Okay.
So you've created a lobby of proportion and grandeur, the size of like an office lobby. And I mean, I love that it connects from the corner into the back of the lot, but which I think it needs to do, but it's also really, really big. And honestly, I think that the lobby shouldn't be on the corner. Personally, I think the lobby should be on the street. I mean, it can be there, but like the corner is a really valuable retail condition.
Yeah.
So let's go. Can you pan over to your basement plan?
I do not have that ready yet. I have it on
can you zoom out a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
So you've got the ramp going down.
Yes.
Off of the alley.
Yep.
And along the west property line. Brilliant. So the elevators can be
here currently.
The elevators can be anywhere that you're not driving. Right? I mean, it's kind of kooky to say it that way, but you can give yourself like a no-fly zone. You can do a drawing, Carmen, that sir, bear with me here. I'm going to do this. You can do a drawing.
I'm going to stop sharing so I can see.
Right.
How do I unshare?
Just hit stop.
Okay. Yes.
So this might be the plan. And that would be the ramp going down.
Yeah.
And at some point, that ramp's going to have to discharge. Oh, I drew the arrows the wrong way. I think I just went to England for a minute. Right. So it's going to discharge. So there's an area where it makes sense to do lobby and elevator, those kinds of things. And I think it makes sense to do it in places like that, along the street, one or the other, but not both.
Even if it's on the front facade, like you were saying?
Yeah, that's not ideal, but if you can embed it a little bit, that will help.
Okay.
They're generally going to be here and here.
Okay.
It's tough, but it can work.
I don't know why I've been having, like, I've done a U and then I've changed it and then I redid it, and then last night I was like, oh no, I'll put it in the corner. So I've easily gone
So what
6 sets, and I don't know
what I think what I would try to do, you guys, is lay out the basement space. You know how long, your floor to floor is going to be. You can set that. That's going to generate the ramp. And the ramp shouldn't, a ramp that you drive down and you don't park on, that can be like 12%. So when you look up what that means in graphic standards, that's the proportion of rise to run. So a ramp that you do not park on, it can actually be, of an incline that's more or less like this. If you park on a ramp, it has to be flatter, right? Because you might have a baby carriage, right? You might have a grocery cart. When you open your door on a ramp that you're parking on, the door is going to bang into the car next to you, and it's going to give you a headache, right? So on a sloping surface that you're parking cars on, it has to be no more than 7%. But you can go up to 12, 13% on a ramp, which allows you to run and rise faster, right, in a shorter length. So what we were talking to Lynette, to Lynn about earlier tonight, was a ramp that's somewhere around 77 to 80 feet in length.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the actual hard surface that is sloping, right? And once you get to the bottom, you've got to turn and make your way into the realm of the basement.
Okay.
So you're probably not putting necessarily stairs and elevators near that, but that might be possible. But so that guides you to locating things in other parts of the leg. You also know that you want the lobby off of the street, so you try to keep the elevator, in proximity to that aspect. That's why in my sketch, while Ash was lecturing last week, when I designed the building, that was kind of my ground floor.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to hug everything to there, but I knew that it was going to impact the parking layout. Let's go back to your layout for a second.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get is parking through just on the first floor for easy access in and out.
Yeah, that would be leftover parking. Don't let that be. Don't depend on that. If you need it, that's great. But try to get all of your parking in the basement.
All right. Yeah, so I was fitting 3, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And tell me a little bit about those parking spaces. They look pretty ample.
They're 8 feet by 16 feet.
So they aren't really big enough. They really need to be 9 feet by 20 feet, or the width of the aisle.
Yeah, 16 by, yeah. Okay. So I'll just put all of those in the basement. What I really wanted was this lobby that kind of hugged the corners, easy access. It goes in and out. You walk in and you get like this exercise room that it doesn't have to be glass. It's nice. They can see the front. They can see the back, a little garden in the back or something.
So,
in the retail space. That was the idea. And then I didn't know, my other question was overhanging. Can I overhang So there's a setback of 10 feet. Can I overhang 10 feet over?
Yes, so that's a good question. That's a code question.
Okay.
When you have an overhang, like a balcony or a formal or mass condition, you are allowed to hang over the property line in the building code. It's called encroachments into the right of way. It's a special chapter of the code, as I recall.
Okay.
And it says that if you're above like 15 feet between grade and the first horizontal encroachment, you're allowed actually an unlimited projection into the right of way. That's what the code might say, but the ordinance in the city of Detroit has other restrictions. So any because of like trash trucks and moving vans and street pole lights and, you know, stuff that the city wants to have in that right of way. So they want that realm to be free of canopies and marquees and projections in that regard. But I guess what I'm trying to say is you should keep all of the mass in the question of projecting into the encroachments to a minimum, to keep them to canopies and awnings, balconies, but you can extend only up to the property line at the first floor, or if you hold back at the first floor like you are, then you can go to the property line at the second floor and above.
Okay, so this part, this here, the orange is property line. The dash line was what I was thinking of, canopy or more of like a balcony for the.
Well, I think that can go out to the property line. You have a much bigger footprint that you could be working within, right?
Yes.
I think the yellow outside line work can actually go to the dash line.
Well, this is the 10 feet that it's asking for, and then this is the adjacent building, which asks for this kind of
exactly.
stepping.
But do you have to take it for the whole length of that property?
Could you repeat that again?
Do you have to take it for the full length of that street property? Let's go back to I'm going to go back to the building program. I have so much trouble finding the building program in this. I'm turning to, yeah. So when I look at plate 4 in the site plan and building envelope, part of the program brief, that transitional setback zone has a it aligns with the adjacent setback of that adjacent building, but it doesn't run for the entire 101 feet. That's one thing. And then, but you have set it back 10 feet like it calls for in the red dash line work, which I think is okay. I mean, I think what you're doing is okay, but what I'm saying is at the floors above, you can go you could cantilever out over that if you felt like that was appropriate for you.
Okay.
So I think what you're doing is okay. Let me go back to your site plan again. Yeah, I forgot about that. I'm just trying to get you to be really about how some of these spaces lay out in terms of their size.
Yeah.
I would try to get the exercise room on the street wall. Let's look at the lower leg of this first floor.
I'm thinking extra retail down below, but that could easily be the exercise room.
Yeah.
with,
So meter room, I don't know how the trash is going to get out to the parking area. I guess what happens is they get
this
it
is
from
the
the
hallway.
alley. Yeah. So
Or
bike
through
storage could go in the basement under the ramp, for
Okay.
example. Electrical's good there. Meter's good there. But there's probably going to have to be a stair down there too, because you have to anticipate the residential units coming in from above.
Yes.
So that retail space is maybe a stairway.
Okay. Yeah, let me go back to the drawing board. I think I like my overall L shape.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I've tried it many different ways, and I feel like this is what I'm comfortable with and what I like, and it helps with my.
So I would make the parking spaces 180 square feet, which is 9 feet by 20 feet.
Okay.
But Lynn shared something with us tonight that I think is kind of interesting. She deduced that like perpendicular parking in the basement just takes up too much room, 20 feet, 20 feet, 20 feet, 20 feet. When you do angled parking, right, you take up a little less width. And over the run of parking drive aisles and parking aisles, that's important, right? Because you're really trying to skin the sort of cat in such a way that you maximize capacity. So she found that one-way drive aisles and one-way parking spaces efficient way to hit the number that she needed, that you all needed, and she put that speed ramp where you had it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that works for the project. Just right at the exit of the alleyway, well, with our lot, it's easy.
Yep, she did it.
She
just did it like you did it, but she drew that basement plan to configure parking as angled parking. I think she told me that it was 30-degree parking.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure she'd be happy to share that with you.
All right. I think those were all my questions.
Cool. Okay. Thanks for visiting. You're welcome to come back on Thursday. Okay.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to visit? Thanks, Carmen. Okay, so as far as I understand, the university held assessment day today, which was an all-day thing. And so Ash told me that he wasn't going to be able to meet with you all tonight. So I'm suggesting that you're free to go. And maybe back here on Thursday night. And I will tell you again that we're not going anywhere this weekend. So if you wanted to visit or share some sketches that you want me to red mark or something like that, I'm happy to do that too. All right. So if I don't see you Thursday night, then you know that I'm available for that. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good job. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, Mark.
Bye for now. You're welcome. Bye-bye.